Okay, so open up your file, and then you need to make this into a smart object. So unlock your background layer, just click on the lock, right click on it, and choose convert to smart object, like that. You should check that your image, let's go to image mode. Make sure your image mode is RGB color and 8-bit channel. It can't be CMYK because some of the filters we're using doesn't work on CMYK. Okay? Now you need to save your file. Please go to File, Save, and save it on your computer. And navigate to your project folder. I should probably go in column mode. And I would if you don't have a Photoshop folder, you might want to make a Photoshop folder here. So a new folder and Photoshop Water Effect folder, like that. And then save this as your last name underscore your first name dash water ps watercolor effect 1, because you're going to do more than one. And make that maximum compatibility. There you go. So save your file. Okay, now let's duplicate our layer 0 layer. So we're going to select layer 0 and press Command J or Control J on a PC. And then we're going to double click on that layer name, layer 0 copy, and we're going to call it original. And we're going to lock it, and then we're going to hide it because we actually don't need it right now. We're going to be looking at this one, not the top one. Okay, there you go. So let's save our file, Command S or Control S on a PC, and then let's rename layer 0. So let's double click on layer 0 and let's rename it Watercolor Effect. Watercolor Effect. All right, so let's drag this layers panel out like this, and we just make it nice and tall. All right, so on your watercolor effect layer, select it, and here's where we're going to add some magic to it. So we're going to go to the filter drop down and choose filter gallery. And in the filter gallery, there's a bunch of categories, and you want to go to the artistic category and you want to choose watercolor. Let me, why is this thing so big? Okay, let me shrink it down so you guys can see it. There you go. All right, so with the watercolor effect selected, we want to check the shadow intensity. So if you make it too high, notice everything is really dark, too much shadow. So we don't want any shadow, so take that down. The texture, you see how it changes here when you change the texture up high? Well, we're going to actually have the texture be applied through a watercolor paper texture. So we don't want any texture here. So both these are 0. Now the brush detail, if you make it really, really high, notice the difference here. It's really detailed brushes, or really low and kind of blotchy. So the general rule with this thing is that if you have a high resolution image, you have a really high resolution image, you want to choose a low brush detail. If you have a low resolution image, and then with a low resolution image, then you use a high brush detail. So my photo is actually a low resolution photo. So I'm going to choose something like around here. But you get to pick. Then you hit OK. So then you have this thing applied to that layer. If you ever want to go back to change those settings, just double click on Filter Gallery, and then you're back to here, and then you can change these settings. Okay? So that's how you can get back to that if you need to. So save your file, Command S, and I'm going to make this thing go away because I really don't need it. So this double arrow here, make that go away. Now I have more space to work with here. Okay, So what we need to do is to create an outlines layer. And the outlines layer is going to be based on this water effect layer. So we're gonna select the watercolor effect layer and press Command J or Control J on a PC, and then we're going to delete. We're going to remove this filter gallery thing. So I'm going to right click on the smart filters on this one here, and choose Clear Smart Filters. So it's just that, and then I'm going to take this thing and name it Outlines, like that. Okay. So why do we want to have an outlines layer? Well, whenever you do watercolor and you have you take watercolor in the analog sense in the real world and you the watercolors tend to have this darker edge on the brush strokes. So we want to emulate that in our thing. So I'm going to go back here. So for our outlines, what we want to do is on our outlines layer, make sure you have your outlines layer selected. You're going to go to Filter, Stylize, Find Edges. So then it automatically finds all the edges, but it's a little bit colorized right now. Okay? So go ahead and save your file. So go ahead and save your file if you haven't done so. So our outlines layer creates an outline, all the outlines of anything that it can find. The problem is it's colored. We don't want any colors because really what we want in our for the outlines, we want just a darker version of it. So we just want the dark version. So what we want is to get rid of all the color from here. So the way we do that is we create a new layer. In fact, we want to create a new adjustment layer. So we're going to go to Layer. Make sure you have your outline layer selected. Go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and we're going to use black and white. Boom. So it creates. So the new layer name is just black and white 1, which is fine. All right. So it might show you the properties window, but the properties are fine. Just leave it as is. So there we go. Now we have a layer called the black and white adjustment layer, and it covers and makes everything black and white. The problem is if you turn off the outlines layer, then the layer underneath, this watercolor effect layer, is now black and white, and that is a problem. So we got to fix that. Okay, so our black and white layer applies to this. How do we make it apply only to this outlines and not to the whole thing? So typically an adjustment layer will make everything below it apply to it. So it applies it to that, and it applies it to this one also. So how do we limit it? Well, it's very simple. Hold down your Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on a PC, and put your cursor on the border between the outlines and the black and white until you get that little arrow with a square on it. And then just click on that border. Boom. So now this little arrow right here says it's only being applied to that layer. So if I turn off outlines, you can see that this thing is still colored, and the black and white effect adjustment layer only applies to this one here. All right, so that's how you do that. All right, so how do we blend our outlines with our watercolor effect? Well, if you select your outlines layer and change the blend mode, instead of normal, change it to multiply. Okay, change it to multiply, and then you can see if you turn on and off the visibility of outlines, you'll see that the outlines are making them, you can see the edges a little bit more like a watercolor painting. So that's how you do that. The problem is with the outlines, it's a little bit darker, so we've got to deal with that. One way you can adjust the darkness of this is to simply take the outlines layer and change the opacity of it. So there you go. So less dark. Play around with this number to see what you like. Then turn the outlines on and off to see the difference. Okay, so it's really up to you of what you like. All right, that's pretty decent. So with the outline layer and the watercolor effect layers, you know, all these smart filters on there, the watercolor painting gets a little dark. So what we need to do is to kind of blend in a little lighter colors. And the colors I want to blend in is going to actually come from the photo. So right now, if you look at this foreground, the foreground is black, the background is white here, these two colors. I actually want to change those to colors within my photo. So I'm going to press the letter I to get the eyedropper tool. That's this guy here. And I'm going to pick some of the lighter colors. So for the foreground, I'm going to pick maybe this lighter blue here. So notice that changed, right? So that changed to a lighter blue. Now I'm going to pick one of the darker blue, but at this time I'm going to hold down my Option key and click on the darker blue, and you can see that the darker blue became the background. And you can, you know, resample if you want. So if you want that as your foreground and then this as your background, just make sure that no Option, no Alt key gives you the foreground, and then Option or Alt will give you the background. So pick two colors like this. Don't forget to save your file. Now we need to create a new layer. So we want to create a new color blend layer, and we're going to put it above our watercolor effect layer. So select your watercolor effect layer and create a new layer like this. So it should be right here between outlines and watercolor effects. And you want to double click on it and rename it color blend. Color blend, like that. Okay? So make sure it's between here. Don't forget to save your file again. So Command S. And then what you want to do is turn the outlines layer temporarily off, the visibility. So I'm just going to turn that off. And I'm going to select my color blend layer. Make sure it's highlighted and active. It's active because you have these little boxes around here like this. And then you're going to go to Filter, Render, Clouds. So it created this cloud effect, and it created the cloud effect with the colors here from your photo. Okay? All right, so that's how you do that. So there's your color blend layer. All right, so now let's blend this thing in with this guy. So to blend any two layers, remember we got to go to our blend mode. So color blend without the color blend. So I'm just going to turn that off real quick. Remember, our watercolor effect here is dark, so we want to lighten it up a bit. So I'm going to turn on my color blend layer, select it, and for the blend mode, I'm going to take that, and anything here under overlay down to here, you can kind of see that it brightens it up a bit. Maybe not hard mix, but any of these will do. So if you just hover over it and change. I kind of like soft light, so I'm going to choose soft light. Okay, so now that's blended with soft light. All right, so let's say you don't like this and you wanted to choose two other colors. So it's okay. Go ahead and turn that off and sample two new colors. So sample that maybe. So there's my new color, and maybe this one, Alt, Option, click. So there's my other one. So now I'm going to create a whole new layer, and then we're going to render the cloud on that. So filter, what is it? Well, render clouds. So it created a cloud effect with the two new colors that I have, and then I'm going to blend that in also using soft light maybe. So there's that one, or there's a difference, maybe that one. So you can choose which one you like instead. All right, so I'm just going to double click on that and call it color blend 2, and maybe color blend 1. And you can create as many of these as you want, and then you can figure out which one you actually want to use in the future. You can also change the opacity of your color blend layer after you've changed the blend mode. Just change the opacity select the layer and change this. Just drag this right to left and see the difference. Change it as much as you want to. So normally when you create a new layer, you usually create the new layer above what you have selected. So I have this layer, and if I click on new layer, it makes a new layer here. But that's not what I want. I actually want a new layer below here. So the way you do that is instead of just clicking on the new layer, you hold down your command key on a Mac or a control key on a PC, and you click on the new layer icon, and it creates the new layer below. So I don't know if you knew that, but that's pretty cool. So we want to name this BG color, like so. Okay. Don't forget to save your file. So Command S. Let's turn on all our layers except for the original line. So make sure all your layers are on. Now here's a cool trick. If you want to solo this layer and turn off all of these ones, what you do is you hold down your Command key, Option key, and you click on this eyeball. It turns all of them off, and this one is soloed. And if you want to undo that, you just Option click on the eyeball again, and they all do that. So let's solo our BG color layer. We want our BG color to have a solid color from our foreground and background colors, so either one. So let's say I want my foreground color to be this, to fill this. What you do is you hold down your Option key on a Mac and press Delete, Option Delete. On a PC, it's Alt and Delete. So just make sure your BG color layer is selected and active, and then go Option Delete. So that's the foreground color. If you want to have the background color, it's Command Delete or Control Delete on a PC. So either one, you pick. All right, so that's how you apply the foreground and background color as a solid color. You might actually want to change the color of this, and that's fine. So what you do is you select that layer, and to change the hue, which is the color, or the saturation, you press Command U or Control U on a PC, and you get the hue saturation window. And you can change whatever hue you want. You can pick a color. Essentially, I just want to make this lighter, so I just want to make it a little bit lighter. Not quite the foreground color, but just a little bit different. You could literally change it to a completely different color if you want. All right, so that's Command U or Control U to bring up hue and saturation. So now we need to unsolo our BG color layer. Just hold down your Option key and unsolo it. And you won't be able to see this background color because this layer here is covering it all up. But it'll come into effect later on, so don't worry about it. So now let's group these layers. So select the black and white layer, hold down your Shift key, and click down to the Watercolor Effect layer. So it's going to select all of these. And then you're just going to group them with Command G. And you're going to double click on group one, and you can call it, you're going to rename this All Effects, like so. Now we're going to put a mask on the All Effects layer. So make sure you have your All Effects layer selected. Don't forget to go Command S to save your file. And normally when you make a vector mask by clicking on the vector mask icon down here, it puts a white mask on it. And white, so the saying is black conceals, white reveals, right? So we don't want to reveal everything. We actually want to conceal everything. So we want to do the opposite. So I'm going to undo that. And instead of clicking just on the mask here, I'm going to hold down my Option key and click on the vector mask icon. And now I have black. So basically the black is concealing everything in here. So it's hiding it, concealing it. And it's revealing, it's showing the background color because everything here is hidden. All right. Okay, so you can see our foreground and background colors are the sample colors we had before. But if you want to change them to the default black and white, you can do one of two things. You can either click on this icon here, or you can press the letter D, and that changes the background colors to black and white, the default. Save your file, Command S, and press the letter B for the brush tool, this tool here. Now what we want to do is get our watercolor brush. So I am going to go to the brush panel here and maybe expand this out a bit. And we imported a bunch of brushes before, and they are underneath the watercolor brushes. So I am going to just pick one. Yeah, how about that one? That's fine. I'm just going to pick this one, and I'm going to check to make sure that my opacity is at 100%. So this thing here, you got to make sure this thing is off. We don't want any airbrush attributes to be on. So the way you get rid of the airbrush attributes is to Option Shift P, or you can just click on that icon. Option Shift P on a Mac, or Alt Shift P on a PC. So that turns that off. When that happens, then these numbers, you can control it with your keyboard. So if you press like a 2, this becomes 20%. If I press a 3, it becomes 30%. If I press a 3.5, it becomes 35%. That's the opacity. So I want to start at a high opacity, so 90% maybe. Then if I want to change the flow is how much of the color is coming out of the brush. So that would be, what is it? You hold down your shift key, and then press a number like 8. Shift 8 is 80%. Shift 0 is 100%. So I want the flow to be 100% actually. And then make sure you have your all effects layer, the vector mask highlighted here. See these little squares? Make sure that it's active like that. So now your brush might be a little big. You can use the left square bracket, right square bracket to make it big or small. Remember, you can use the left arrow to rotate, or shift left and right to rotate this way. And what you do is, if you just click once, it's going to start revealing the image. So I'm just going to start clicking like this, and maybe change my brush size. So I'm randomly clicking, and you can even stroke a brush like this to have this kind of water cloud effect. And you can use your Wacom pen tool for this too. Obviously, this is you're using a brush here, right? So change the brush size, change the opacity, maybe a little lower opacity, a little higher opacity, whatever works. So I'm just brushing it so I can kind of have this little vignette happening here. Something like that. Cool. Now if you messed up and you want some stuff back, just change to the color black. See, my foreground color is white right now. What if I want black? So press the letter X, and then you can bring it back. So now, so that's the opposite. It's like erasing the vector mask. X is the opposite way. Remember, so black conceals, white reveals. So I'm using white to brush and revealing the image. My background, let me change the tool here. Don't forget Command S. My background is a little bit smooth. I used to have that watercolor effect, right? So I need to create a new layer above all effects. So I'm going to create a new layer. Make sure it's above all effects. And I'm going to call it paper texture. Paper texture. Like that. And then I'm going to go File, Place Embedded. And you remember the water texture color thing, watercolor paper texture photo we used before? Select it, find it, select it, and place it. So I'm just going to move it off to the side and accept it, and then I'm going to duplicate it, Command J or Control J, and then I'm going to drag it with my move tool, drag it so it fills the entire thing. All right, so now I'm going to take these two, select both of them, right click, and merge those layers together. So now it's just one. All right, and then remember, to apply this, we want to take away the brightness and leave the darkness. So we're going to use the multiply like this. So now we have a little textured edge texture to everything here. Cool, right? The beauty of what we've done here is that all of this is basically non-destructive. Our actual photo is still, you know, there, and we can make adjustments along the way, like this, for example. Let's take our BG color layer and press Command U or Control U on a PC, and you can change the color if you want. So if I don't like this color, I can then change it to something I want here. Or if I want to sample this, something like that, make it a little lighter, something like that. All right, so that's that. Another adjustment would be, if you twirl this down, you can change the opacity of the outline. So take outlines and change the opacity to be maybe a little bit darker. So now we have stronger outlines. That's up to you. And what else? We can change the smart filter here on this guy, the filter gallery. So double click on the filter gallery under Watercolor Effect, and then you can change the brush detail, maybe to be less or more. It's up to you. Right? So figure that out. And then you can change the opacity of your blend color, whatever you want that to be. All right? Or you can change the blend mode for that, maybe to hard light or to linear light. I think this needs to be above this layer to affect it. Oh, it's down so low. I can't really see the difference. Anyway, you can play around with those. What else? You can apply more brushes to this. So select your all effects layer, make sure that that's highlighted there, that vector mask. Get your brush tool, change or make this bigger if you want, and then start brushing again. It's non-destructive. You can just keep adding, and if you make a mistake, change the color to black with the letter X, and then add it back in. Something like that. Oops. Change your brush size. So you have your watercolor effect, and you can compare it with the original by turning the original back on. So there's your original watercolor effect. So it's the watercolor effect is just on this layer, and then we blended in the foreground and background color to brighten it up a bit, because this made it a little dark. And then we added some outlines to make the lines a little bit stronger. And then we created a vignette with a vector mask, painting on white to reveal, right? And then we added a background color, this background color, and we added the watercolor paper texture. So see if you can do that on your own with another photo. Okay,